If you read gardening magazines, you're presented with an idealized vision of a sprawling backyard homestead. But if you step out onto the average apartment balcony or paved patio, you're faced with a very different physical reality. You are working with a severe lack of square footage. Choosing the wrong plant for that kind of constrained footprint has immediate consequences. A single pumpkin or squash variety can send out vines stretching 20 feet, completely choking out walkways, seeding, and other plants. Historically, maximizing crop yield in cities required access to large communal plots. It took massive amounts of tilled open soil and multiple people working together to cultivate a wide variety of crops. Most modern urbanites do not have access to that kind of space. Instead, today's city dwellers are dealing with deep spatial isolation. We have narrow corridors, towering brick walls, and long shadows that drastically reduce the amount of direct sunlight hitting the ground level. In these tight environments, one-and-done crops like head cabbage or corn are a massive waste of real estate. A cabbage will sit in a container for months, taking up valuable light and water, only to yield a single harvest at the very end of the season. The core rule of modern small space gardening is efficiency. Every single inch of soil and sunlight has to earn its keep. Small space success means abandoning the farm fantasy. You cannot grow everything. Instead, you have to ruthlessly optimize for the exact physical constraints of your specific space. The alternative to planting outward across the floor is a concept called multidimensional stacking. You stop thinking in flat rows and you start thinking in vertical layers. To build those layers, you need an anchor plant. This is a specific botanical species chosen for one reason. It leverages vertical space or produces a continuous yield to drastically outperform the physical footprint of its container. This diagram maps the variables dictating which anchor plant survives: available sunlight, square footage, and your desired goal. Sunlight is your most inflexible constraint. Without enough, the plant fails. Matching your light limit and square footage with your goal isolates the perfect species. Identifying this intersection gives your garden a focus. Without it, a tiny patio quickly devolves into an unmanageable, low-yield jungle of dying plants. The first anchor archetype is the high-yield edible. We are talking about determinate cherry tomatoes and cut-and-come-again leafy greens like arugula and spinach. These plants require strict environmental inputs to survive. A single determinate tomato needs a 15 to 20-gallon container so the roots can expand, and it requires 6 to 8 hours of direct, uninterrupted sunlight every day. They also demand heavy labor inputs. Because the soil volume is limited, containers dry out incredibly fast in the summer heat. You will be tied to a rigorous, often daily, watering schedule. Looking at this comparison matrix, the return on investment is massive. A single, well-managed cherry tomato plant provides continuous fruit from a tight footprint. But there's a major trade-off that destroys many beginner gardens: dense foliage. High-yield edibles grow incredibly thick. Humidity gets trapped inside the leaves. If you're not aggressively pruning away the lower branches and suckers, fungal diseases will spread rapidly and wipe out the plant. The high-yield edible is perfect for the optimizer willing to monitor soil moisture and trim leaves. But if you cannot commit to daily patio maintenance, it is a guaranteed failure. If you want to prioritize ambiance over food, your second archetype is the vertical architect. This category includes plants like star jasmine, clematis, and compact climbing roses. Instead of sprawling horizontally across the floor, these plants claim empty vertical air. They weave and climb upward, following the structural paths you provide. To make this work, you have to provide permanent physical structures. You need heavy wall trellises or tension wires installed securely, plus the initial labor of physically tying and training the young vines upward. The outcome is a massive vertical scale. You get a dense wall of greenery that blocks sightlines from neighbors and fills the air with intense fragrance, all while leaving your ground space entirely open for chairs and tables. The trade-off here is permanence. Unlike a potted pepper plant you can slide across the deck, climbers lock you into a permanent layout. They also require disciplined pruning to prevent the heavy vines from literally pulling down your trellises or damaging fences. The vertical architect is the ultimate choice for the aesthetic minimalist. It delivers a lush, immersive environment without sacrificing a single inch of your seating space. For shaded, tricky environments, you need the final architect, the shade-tolerant problem solver. We are looking at specific ferns and dense evergreen ground covers like sweetbox. These plants survive in dappled light or deep shade, requiring soil packed with high organic matter to replicate a forest floor. Their primary function is to create low-maintenance, year-round structural greenery in the dark corners of a patio where nothing else will grow. They also provide a highly functional secondary outcome, passive pest control. Slugs target soft, tender foliage, but the base of a fern is rough, leathery, and often contains toxic chemical compounds that disrupt a slug's digestion. By planting a dense perimeter of ferns around the edges of a shaded container garden, you construct an impenetrable biological barrier that protects your softer, more vulnerable plants from attack. The trade-offs are strict. You get zero edible yield, the growth rates are very slow, and no showy summer blooms. This archetype is not the colorful star of your garden. It is a highly functional tool. It turns a dead, shaded zone into a working defensive perimeter. The idea of a perfect universal plant is a myth. Success is entirely dependent on matching the specific biology of the plant to the physical constraints of your yard. This flowchart finds your match. Do you have 6+ hours of direct sun? If yes, and you want food, your anchor is the cherry tomato. For ambience, it's a vertical climber. If you have low sun and pests, your anchor is a fern barrier. Look back at the historical successes of urban gardening. It was never about cramming a sprawling variety of seeds into a few pots. It required extreme, focused discipline to make small areas productive. Going to the nursery and buying dozens of random plants on impulse guarantees an unmanageable mess that will crowd out your light and suffocate your roots. Stop trying to recreate a farm on a balcony. Pick one hard-working anchor plant, optimize your space to meet its specific inputs, and let it define the entire garden.